The topic for this today's discussion is cloud the inevitable best practice when it comes to the data center. So since morning, you all guys have been listening on the cloud and the data center, and also on the applications what can be go into cloud and what cannot be go into the cloud. And we also as a panel will also discuss on the same aspects, and we'll discuss on the both lines of the clouds. So before going into a discussion, just I wanted to give a brief on what is cloud computing, though many people have many definitions. So what the NIST speaks on the cloud computing. So NIST, as all of us know, National Institute of Software Technology, and it's a standard, it creates the standards for all the organizations. So it says that cloud computing is a model for enabling convenient, on-demand network access to a shared pool. So this is the most important word, shared pool of configurable computing resources. So what are those computing resources? Networks, servers, storage, applications, and services that can be rapidly provisioned and released with minimal management effort. So now the important sentence is minimal management effort or minimal service provider interaction. So this is the definition of cloud. So if he speaks on the benefits of the cloud, there are so many benefits. That's why many of the organizations are choosing to go into the cloud. And the cloud has different types of models. So we'll speak on that also. And for the cloud cannot be considered as a best fit for all kind of issues, and where it can fit and where it cannot fit. And also what are the risks and challenges while selecting a cloud model or while taking a decision to go into the cloud. I have a couple of survey reports which I just collected from the independent sources. So if you see over the last 3 to 4 years, what people are thinking on the cloud, and after 3 to 4 years, what the industry people are thinking on the cloud. So there is a, if you take first viewpoint, after choosing a cloud, how it has benefited the organizations. So these 72% of respondents are telling that it is a good return on investment. The cloud computing or the cloud model that they have chosen, it's a good. And 19% of are telling that they have got a substantial benefit by going into the cloud. So which is a very good trend. And the challenges, the most important is the data security. The concerns on the data security in cloud model are in a decreasing trend. Like it has decreased from 42% to 35%. There are two concerns also which are in an increasing trend in the industry. So the first and most important is the concerns on governance and compliance, probably because of so many laws and regulations. And the trend has increased from 21% to 27%. And other important aspect also, lock-in, like the organization's capability or ability to change the cloud vendors. This concern has raised from 7% to 22%. So it is a industry, and worldwide these figures were taken from all countries, from all the organizations who have chosen the cloud or who are expecting to choose the cloud as a model. So my questions will be to the panelists. So first we will discuss on what are the benefits of the cloud model, and whether the cloud model or the cloud service provider can be a replacement to the data center. So I request Mr. Milind to speak.
When we talk about the benefits of going to cloud and vis-a-vis hosting everything in-house, I mean, traditionally, all the organizations, particularly in BFSI sector banks, have been averse to looking at anything being hosted outside their own premises. Major concerns have been the customer data protections and how do you mitigate that risk. So that has been the main concern. over past couple of years, the technologies that have been offered by the cloud service provider vendors have somehow reduced this risk and helped in building the confidence. Of course, there are still many areas where we still have to be absolutely sure when we are talking about the customer data to cloud. But there are some areas, for example, there are some non-core applications or testing environments that we can consider of hosting it on cloud. The advantage of going there is the agility with which you can set up the infrastructure, and as and when required, you can augment the compute, you can augment the storage, and also there are at times you need to add the security features that also can be added. So that gives an advantage of, like switching on and off the cloud services whenever you require it. And whenever you need to augment the resources, you can augment it. So unlike if you are having it in-house, if you are hosting it on your premises and you need to augment the resources, then you have to go through the entire CapEx process. So unlike that, here you are on an OpEx model, and which helps in saving the capital cost as well as it brings in the agility. With terms to security, I think some of my colleagues will be able to tell you more in details.
Yeah, and thank you, Milind. And so the agility, which is one of the most important benefits of the clouds, and also the cost effectiveness, and that Milind has covered. Now I request Mr. Abhishek also to speak on other aspects of the benefits with different models of the deployment.
So I feel one key part to understand is the drive for every CIO to look at cloud is primarily to also bring ease in running their own shop. Right? There's lot more demand from businesses that CIO spends more time trying to innovate and design new things with the business than trying to run the shop. And some part of that execution and responsibility, I won't say accountability, but execution and responsibility, if can get passed on in a more efficient, standardized, best practices manner to another partner, it definitely makes sense. And that's essentially what one is trying to achieve by hosting or taking applications which are hosted on cloud, right? If it's a standard, why do I need to start replicating those processes every time internally? So that's one part. Second, I feel it's also important to understand that cloud at times gets confused between two offerings which are available, right? IaaS versus PaaS. So infrastructure as a service and platform as a service have two different dynamics, have two different execution and delivery capabilities, and same holds true in terms of when you accept and assess it from an organization perspective. PaaS, in PaaS, as an organization, your responsibility to execute is less. You can bring a lot more ownership and responsibility to the service provider. When it's IaaS, it is a little different. There's a lot more responsibility which would lie within the organization, even if you're hosting on cloud. So differences between IaaS and PaaS are significant, and that needs to be assessed. But given that, I feel in PaaS there are huge advantages which organizations get to see. We can't, as a business, keep investing in regular testing, security, innovation, automation. All that is what is key for the cloud providers to service and sustain themselves. So their capability to invest in such innovations will be far higher than what a CIO in an organization can look at.
And thank you, Abhishek. So it is more important, for us or the decision makers or the recommending authorities while choosing a cloud model, what is the type of deployment we should choose. So whether it is an infrastructure as a service or it is a platform as a service or the other models like which Abhishek has highlighted. So we always think, that CISOs are always, talks about the risks and concerns, not on the benefits which can bring into the business. Probably it may not be the correct one. So we have 3 CISOs in this panel, and also we'll talk on the benefits of the cloud models that the company, it brings to the company. So I request Shashank to tell about tell us on the benefits of the cloud.
Yeah, so as I said, we are ensuring information security and accountable for information security. So accountability still lies with us as CISOs, but we cannot hinder the growth and scalability. So what I have seen, the basic key advantage of moving to cloud is being scalable. It is all the legacy systems which might have been concerned for moving to cloud, but for a fintech startup like us, where we have zero legacy systems, it becomes very easy and much more agile and much more scalable for handling a lot of business propositions and handling a number of different partners. So that is taken care of. When it comes to be it IaaS or PaaS or SaaS, definitely SaaS is the least wherein we can have any visibility, but it is much more agile and much more faster to implement. For example, developing a certain HRMS tool inside an organization would require a couple of months maybe, and to suit everyone's need and design every workflow properly, and then periodically pass the QA, UAT and security test. Rather than if I can onboard a SaaS tool which is already tested and certified by independent auditors as it is a secure HRMS system, which will ensure that my employee data is well secured, it is encrypted with my legitimate PKI infrastructure, then I will definitely move on to cloud. So the challenges are there definitely, but the benefits are humongous of moving to cloud, especially when it comes to start up anything very fast. Definitely when it comes to data visibility and data in the cloud, it is sole responsibility and accountability of we as CISOs to ensure that it is in the right hands. The integration of data input points and data exfil points are well managed. Also, the data at rest is very well encrypted, and it is basically used by in-house grown or homegrown kind of encryption channels, so that it does not even if there is a data illegitimate data transfer or data breach happening, there are chances of leakage of confidential information, especially in the BFSI segment, handling information which pertains to transactions as well as monetary information. The data encryption on cloud is pure our accountability. So that would be my point.
Yeah, thanks, Asams. Like cloud which gives more benefits to the startup companies. They need not to invest in the capital expense, and they can quickly go into the market with their services. So which brings a major advantage to the startup companies. So even in that aspect also, even a company may not be a startup, but wanted to bring a product with a very less time to market. So whether that company can choose a cloud computing, because when they wanted to host any applications, all these infrastructure procurements and other things may take time, which all of us know it takes more than 4 to 6 weeks of time, and the company does not want to wait for that time. And also, if you look at the other, if you look at performance appraisal system, so the uses of performance appraisal system is peak at the end of March or probably at the start of April in all our companies, because everybody started accessing the application. So and out of 12 months, it is required for 15 days. So whether we need to keep a very huge resource in terms of memory, processor and storage in the performance for the performance management system. Whether it's a right approach to keep inside or whether it is a right approach to go to cloud and bring the more resource for 1 month only, and for other 11 months it's a minimal resource which is required for a minimum uses. So now coming to Bijay, if you look at the survey results which I just spoke, the concerns on governance and compliance is increasing in the industry if they wanted to choose a cloud model. So what is your take on this? Why people are raising the concerns?
Well, as far as the BFSI segment is concerned, there are multiple aspects which we need to look at. One is the regulatory aspect within the country, and then of course there are certain concerns which comes because of the kind of service which we happen to offer. Probably if in case there is a possibility that we have a service that is hitting the European Union, then probably we'll be coming under the governance of GDPR. And similarly, there is a new regulation which has come up. If in case GST is equivalent of GST in the US, if in case we are doing the customer is doing a transaction through an online portal, then we need to be ensured that all the controls which we happen to put across need to be in lines with that of the controls within the US regime. This one has come up from, if I'm very right, South Dakota. That's a particular state within the US, which has just released that particular thing, others to follow. And then coming within India, of course, we need to also ensure that the RBI regulations, which is very, very stringent, and also an equivalent, the SEBI or the NBA from NRHF, all those organizations also have a regulatory compliance which need to be abided by. That is one aspect of it. Then coming to data privacy part of it, it is going to be a growing concern even within India, because even though we are not directly hit by GDPR, if in case within the premises of geographical limits, we must also understand India is going to have its own Data Protection Act, which is in fact on the way, which is in fact to be released under the purview of Justice Sri Krishna. So these are the concerns which will definitely hit when it comes to data on cloud. So we need to be very, very privy about all these aspects of it, and it is a serious business when it comes to putting the data out there.
Yeah, thank you, Vijay. So we have looked at both the aspects on the benefits and also the concerns on the governance and compliance aspect. So the other thing also, is cloud the silver bullet for all type of issues, or so whatever the problem the organization face, whether cloud is the solution for everything. And like Mr. Milind is from banking industry and which goes through a very stringent regulations like RBI. So like whether a critical application like core banking or any of the associated systems, can it be hosted in a cloud? So I would like request Milind to just focus on it.
With regards to specific application like core banking, if you are talking about, then there are multiple options. I mean, the large banks where the transaction processing is voluminous and the user access is also voluminous. The number of users are in thousands. The number of transactions that are hitting the database are also in multiple. So there it may be a challenge to host it on a cloud. Though of course some of the core banking solution providers have started offering cloud-based services, and they are offering it as pay-per-use and also in the other models. But if it comes to smaller banks, yes, where the transaction volumes would be low, for them, again, it is up to that particular bank how much risk mitigation and risk acceptance they are ready to do. Depending on that, they can take the call. So there are two things into this. The large banks where the transaction processing would be higher, there the challenge would be to look at the cost benefit analysis, because the compute power that will be required, the bandwidth that will be required to access the cloud-based services would be much, much higher. And there the cost benefit analysis may not work out to the advantage. So that really needs to look at.
Yeah, thank you, Milind. So the cost benefit analysis, which is also a most important aspect, because when we choose a model and started using it after 1 year period of time, the senior management will ask what is the ROI, what is the return on investment. So the decision makers has to give some comment, has to comment on it, whether it has achieved the required result or not. So in order to reply to all these questions, it is always advisable that before moving into any cloud module, we need to have a cost benefit analysis, and whether it is a CAPEX, OPEX, and all these things. However, looking at the cloud deployments, and also just I would like to highlight one of the incidents like the Tesla company has faced in one of their cloud deployments. And the hackers has hijacked the cloud account of the company to mine cryptocurrency. So like cloud, we know that whenever the resources are not used, it's a pool of resource, and it is shared by all the clients that are hosted their applications or services in the cloud. So when the resources are free, then anyone can use those resources. And for the cryptocurrency, mining the cryptocurrency, lots of free resources required. And the hackers used this cloud hosting environment to mine the cryptocurrency. And the root cause analysis has given that the credentials, like the privileged user IDs credentials, were left in an unsecured environment, was left in the, in a IT admin console. So now I would request to Abhishek to, to just, give your thought when choosing a cloud model on the different models, whether it's a PaaS, it's a infrastructure as a service, or as a software as a service. So what is the different types of responsibility that lies in the cloud service provider, and also what are the responsibility lies with the organizations?
So I feel the way it goes is it says a normal Raki matrix. Right? It says that there's a responsibility and there's accountability. Responsibility is the person, or it said the person who's doing execution, doer, right? And accountability is the neck on the line. By doing or taking platforms to cloud, you can be clear, you can make the responsible part go out of your hand, but you definitely cannot have the accountable part going. So the person who's sitting in the organization is still accountable, is still neck on the line, right? Whether it's related to do with security, whether it's to do with performance, or whether it's to do with manageability. Some part of execution responsibility, or sometimes even significant part of that, can go out of the organization, and that's how it helps optimize the cost, because some of the new offerings which are coming from these cloud providers, right, which is like storage as a service or DR as a service, right? I mean, it has been always a pain point for a lot of CFOs, saying that you invest so much in DR, and at the end, if you see how many times do you invoke DR, how many you only do tests, right? The chances of natural calamity happening and DRs getting invoked is far lesser, but you actually go ahead and scale up your whole infrastructure equivalent to DR. Why don't we look DR as a service, which is more pay-as-you-go service, right? There are so many models now available with some of these cloud providers. Same holds true for storage, right? I mean, our demand for data storage is only increasing and increasing. So all these the new services which are available actually help CIOs optimize their IT budget much better, manage the cash flows, right? That itself becomes a big thing, right? For IT today, in most of the organization is, if not the top, maybe in the top 3 quadrants of the expense, right? First comes staff, and maybe next would be marketing or IT. That's how we have seen the balance sheet stand today. So optimizing IT cost by using models which move from CapEx to RevEx, more efficient, higher scale, time to market, all these factors do help a lot in trying to look at cloud as an option.
And thank you, Vivek. So the other aspect is the responsibility and accountability, which has spoken by Abhishek. So we all need to understand where the organization's responsibility lies and where the organization's accountability lies. So probably we may transfer the responsibility, but we may not able to transfer the accountability. We are accountable to the board, we are accountable to our government agencies, and we are accountable to the regulator if there is an incident. So I will speak on another incident where the one of the third party or contractor of Australian government has hosted some of their environments in a cloud model, and around more than 50,000 records were stolen. So the root cause analysis has revealed that it was due to the misconfiguration of the storage server. So the taking ahead the discussions of responsibility and accountability. So it is whose responsibility while configuring a server, and it is whose accountability, who should take care of all these aspects. So can I request now Sasank to give your thoughts on it?
Right. So such kind of incidents wherein there have been data breaches definitely are concern for a CISO role. And what I've seen is for especially what we try to do is secure by design is one of the things which you have to enforce, and it has to be in a very preliminary stage of adopting cloud. When we are discussing the service level agreements, they have to be well defined, especially when it comes to regulated environment like of BFSI, knowing the right to audit, what can exactly be done, how soon can we get results, or at least how much assurance can we derive from the already certified bodies which are giving certificates to such providers. So I won't name any cloud solution providers, but they're all the service providers are well certified, and they manage their data centers so well that gives us very pleasant thought that my entire infrastructure is very well secure. But that's not the case, because it is multi-tenant architecture, and my accountability still lies with my data. So that's where it comes while whenever you're designing the entire in-house applications, or maybe putting out certain COT solutions on our cloud environment, how secure they are by design. Then would be basically how to enforce, as I earlier said, maybe encryption, or may not just be encryption. What all policies and processes are we enforcing? So when it comes to solution provider, cloud service provider, what all responsibilities are being taken care of? Well, for the likes of DevOps team, or rather we can call it as a Sec DevOps team, which has evolved into more security development as well as operations, which is currently handling the entire cloud infrastructure, solutions, even software as services. So all these three models have to be taken care of a single Sec DevOps team, which would definitely understand what kind of environment are we hosted on our cloud, what kind of patches are required for our servers, for our applications, and what is the duration, and how soon basically can we remediate a certain threat which has emerged, and how can we protect our assets which are hosted on cloud from certain global threats basically. Yeah. So it is that way.
Yeah, thank you, Sasan. So protection of our own responsibility is our responsibility, our accountability. So we are accountable to all the authorities. While the cloud provides lots of benefits like work from anywhere, allows IT department to shift focus from day-to-day operational jobs to strategic jobs and more useful jobs, which is useful for the organizations. It reduces the time to market, and it is also reduces the capital expense, and it provides new opportunities for the new business models. However, there are concerns on from various quarters. So apart from the governance and compliance concerns, what all other concerns are there? Can you please give?
Well, when it comes to cloud, there are a couple of aspects which we need to see. As Shashank mentioned, it's a security by design is the principle that is going to be the underlying component. Now, one thing we must also understand, the Intel architecture by itself is flawed. I do not know, many of you probably know of the meltdown and the Spectre. This is an inherent problem as far as the basic architecture itself is concerned. So if that is yet not fixed, they keep saying that it is being secured by software component, but it cannot be, because the architecture, I come from a hardware background, underlying issue has to be redesigned. That means every compute which we hold, be it the laptop, the desktop, your mobile, the iPads, or any tabs, everything what we carry now, to date, or probably a couple of years from now, may be flawed. That is the basis. Now, given this as the basis, we are talking about cloud, where we are trying to put across things in a multi-tenant environment, and we have to keep that in mind, that the data is in a flawed environment. So security by design is itself flawed, because the underlying component itself is flawed. Okay, assuming that this risk is inherent, we accept this particular risk, we go about to the next level and see, okay, within this environment, how we are going to secure it. The data is to be encapsulated very well. That is one part of it. But all the security controls, be it the IAS, the PAS, or whatever, you have to be very, very clear. Fundamentally, the accord which we happen to write with that particular vendor or service provider has to be very, very stringent. Even the big players, without naming them, if you happen to go through the things, many things are hidden. First of all, they have to come up very, very clear and state these are the things which we do not take care of, has to be very, very clear. Unless that is not coming up, there is always an issue. That is the reason the most important thing is the tabletop exercise which you happen to perform before you get into an accord with any kind of a cloud service provider to ensure that everything is well intact everything is black and white, and it is agreed upon. On top of it, we should also ensure that our core business is not affected, because particularly when it comes to BFSI, a regulator will be right on top here. Okay? So that means we need to ensure that regulatory compliances are never given the second thought, it's given the first thought. Every time we need to ensure that that is taken care for without any kind of a jeopardization as far as that particular component is concerned. So we need to be, this basis, what I'm trying to say is, we need to be very, very careful when we happen to choose a service provider, and the terms and conditions which we go about with that particular service provider and post the kind of data. As this gentleman was mentioning about what's the kind of data which we happen to put across. Yes, it should not be very transactional or compute intensive kind of a component which goes there. If in case it is highly computational intensive, then the question is, how good is that particular environment to manage that particular thing, and how many copies it holds. See, the thing is, there will be always a kind of a RAID model, and multi-copies will always exist. The largest providers of the world always have a second and a third copy. If in case the primary fails, the storage, for example, ultimately it moves on to the second one, and of course the data is as far as the end user is concerned, it is very transparent. The entire data is coming from the second storage or the third, whatsoever the case may be. So ultimately, it is the life cycle which is very, very important when it comes to data management in the cloud. So if in case, at any given instance, you are planning to pull off your data from that particular environment, whatsoever the reason may be, you should ensure that the existence of that particular data is seeing a real demise in every component out there, underlying component out there, be it the compute for that matter, be it the memory, or be it for that matter, the storage. If this is not well taken care of, then we are under trouble. And also from the fact there will be DR services, there are certain underlying DR services not written, they ensure that that is being taken care of, or it is well written and you state that the DR services and the premises, because BFSI, the premises is very, very important within the geological limits of India. So that is also supposed to be taken care for. So with this particular thing, risk is really large. Unless we look at it in depth, we will be always in a risky state of
Yeah, thank you, Vijay. So the data security concern is one of the most important concern, and also like Sasank has also explained on the Sec DevOps, and Vijay also told security by design. So while designing an solutions or designing a cloud model, we need to keep in mind and we need to take actions on the aspects of the security by design. So coming to the risks and challenges, where the concerns are on increasing trend, the regulators every day, almost every day, they are coming with some new regulations or new rules. So as a CIO, Mr. Milind, this question is for you. So as a CIO or as a decision-making authority, so if some business comes to you as a CIO to move a product, and with a specific request to go to cloud because there is a time to market is very less, and so you need to keep the business in mind also, you need to keep all the concerns and issues in mind also. So how easy or difficult to take a decision for a CIO? Can you please give your thought?
You have asked a question to a CIO. Well, it is a difficult question, and it is a difficult decision also, because we do get requests from various business heads, particularly the digital banking people. They are always edgy. They are always ready to go to market at the nearest opportunity and the product that they want to go with. And of course, the peer pressure, the competition also is there for them to go to such things. But as has been discussed, we also need to look at the ROI when we are looking at the products that we need to host onto the cloud services, whether the compute that is required, the storage that is required, and the risk factors that we will be putting up, like the DLP or ATPs that we need to put. So at what cost we are incurring on them. And as well as we also need to look at the growth pattern of that particular product as to what will be the usage in terms of in a time span, maybe not more than 2 years, because the product life cycles are reducing day by day. So in a year or in a 2 years, what is going to be the product life cycle and how it is going to be beneficial to host it on the cloud. So these are some of the factors that we need to consider when we are going to cloud with a new product or any new services that we want to host. Basically, what we do is any new product that is coming up, we can consider setting up a UAT or a DevOps environment onto the cloud where they do the testing and then we are ready to roll it out faster. So that can be done. And but at the same time, if we are going to invest time and money and efforts into CapEx, whether it is worth the wait, that also is the question. So finally, it depends on each organization to take that call and how really that product is going to perform in the market. It depends on that. So the going to cloud question, I would say, is depending on the product and its usage, its acceptance, and the risk that it needs to carry.
Yeah, and thank you, Milind. So it depends on the organizations. How big is the organization? How small is the organization? What is the thought process of the senior management of the organizations while choosing a cloud model? While the CIOs also cannot close their eyes to the aspects of the risks and the concerns. On the same question, can you please provide your thought, Abhishek?
Yeah. So I feel because the CIO has an equal responsibility on security, right? While it lies with CISO as accountability, the responsibility lies with CIO to design and ensure that it's protected. But given the Indian market, right, and compared to globally, India is supposed to be a fast-paced market. The agility and time to market is the biggest demand. And as a result of which, if you look at it, almost every OEM today has a cloud offering in store, right? I mean, it's no more just left to big four cloud providers, right? Every OEM has a cloud offering available today, primarily because that's the need of the market. The on-demand resource capability, where I should be able to spin off an application in a few weeks, I should be able to change, deliver in a few weeks, in a few days, is only going to grow, and which needs to ensure that we use such kinds of capability available in the market. So sometimes we also need to understand as an organization that we should not shrug under the blanket of risk. You have to take certain amount of calculated risk. I won't say open risk, but calculated risk, and go ahead and walk the path. That's the only way you can eat the market and take the cream of the market out.
Yeah, and thank you, Abhishek. Also, looking at the shadow IT environments or shadow IT culture, which has been in an increasing trend in most of the organizations nowadays. So, and CIOs has a greater challenge to face these issues. So, Milind, how do you really face, if a business is going to cloud without informing IT, and also suddenly the head IT or CIO knows, yes, some of the critical services or services which is hosted in the cloud are processing some of the critical data of the company. And finally, if something happens, everybody will come to IT because they don't understand IT. Some vendor has convinced some of the business department for which they have deployed the product in the cloud. So how do you tackle these shadow IT situations in the companies?
Fortunately for us, this has not happened, because either the CIO or the CISO will not allow this to happen. And we have the processes laid down as to the new product launches and the new requirements that comes in. It goes through the risk management process. And that's how the mitigation is done, You really need to, every organization need to understand that there will be pressures from the business side to go to the market or, go to an environment where they will be quickly able to launch. For example, one of our requirement was an HRMS solution, which the HR department wanted to launch at the end of the financial year, within the 15 days. So there was a pressure that why don't you go to cloud? And we did that review of the product, and when we decided that yes, we can go to cloud, and we did that. So that kind of situation can come. But ultimately, the business users also understand that going directly with the vendors and going directly with what they say and exposing your organization to a greater risk of data breaches will ultimately hit them, because as has been discussed previously, though you can pass on the hosting and infrastructure responsibility onto the cloud service provider, the accountability remains with the organization. So that has to be made clear to everybody. Then this kind of situations will not arise.
Thanks, Milind. So I will just slightly change the question. So in case of these scenarios, Abhishek, so what the CIO should do, how to handle the shadow IT scenarios, and also for a product or service which is processing the critical data of the company.
So I feel the drive in today's tech world is that every individual in the organization believes that one knows the technology more than the technology team. And there's no harm in it, honestly. And we face such challenges every day, right? I mean, however strong your organizational operating framework be, the drive of every business to adopt to a new platform or bring in a new platform which they believe is the best will always be there. Sometimes you have to mingle, agree with the business, demonstrate once or twice the places they have slipped, next time they start agreeing onto it. But this risk is always going to be there, right? Because with cloud being in place and service being in place, it may be directly coming in through internet. So the CIO of a big organization never come to know that a small department has started using a particular service without the knowledge of the CIO. So that risk tends to be there. Stronger organizational frameworks help put it in place, but I don't feel there's a right answer on how you can stop the shadow IT thinking. And I feel some place it's good also, because everyone in the organization trying to innovate actually only helps, right? It's not the responsibility of a bunch of IT people in the team to come out with the digital strategy of the organization. It's the whole organization who's now looking at moving on to the new digital strategy.
Yeah. So the right organizational framework probably can reduce the risks to the company and also reduce the situations like shadow IT. And also we all know that right approach towards to the people, process, technologies. So also can reduce the risk to more it is more visible and more beneficial to the company. However, Sasank, so suppose in this kind of scenario where the business and IT all are in favor of moving something to cloud, and the data product or application is going to process the critical applications of the company. So apart from the right to audit, which you have already told, so what else you should advise to the business and IT?
Right. So right, for representing a digital fintech insurtech firm, my entire business strategy is being digital. So right from the marketing team is doing digital marketing, the sales are completely digital. There are no agents who are running the show. So then there is digital in each and every process and each and every key people in the organization. The people, process, technology changes from just technology and technology. So but they when it comes to awareness is being one of the things which I would like to highlight is not just making them aware of security or framework, but also sensitizing them that they are in a BFSI segment, and even if you are doing a lot of digital stuff, or you are migrating your stuff into digital landscape or using software service cloud models, you should be sensitive enough as to what data is getting exposed, what are the data inputs. The key things is we have to pitch in not as a controller but as an enabler to the digital business, wherein whenever there are third-party interactions or whenever there are partnerships with different vendors, as a CISO or as a security controller, we can scrutinize them, but also we have to enable them as to yes, you can definitely choose XYZ kind of interactions, and you can definitely leverage RESTful APIs and you can definitely use, such kind of mechanisms which are secure, and you can ask for, certain XYZ kind of SLAs with the, service provider whenever you are entering into a new business. At the same time, it is the privacy aspect is so caught up in the fire that everyone is now privacy aware, data aware. That whenever there is new interaction, new business points which are coming in, every time we get looped in, we get called in for our viewpoint, and that actually helps the business to take the right call, to take the right business decision in the right manner. That also helps in keeping in mind the regulatory aspect, and keeping ourselves fully compliant with the regulations. Also helping the digital business. So
yeah, thank you, Sanjay. Like CISOs also act as a business enabler to their organizations, advising the business and IT and all the key stakeholders on the challenges or the risks and the mitigation measures for those risks and challenges. We will all have the risk and we will all have the challenges in all the operations and in all the initiatives. But there must be a compensatory control, there must be a mitigation measures to all those things. So we cannot eliminate the risk, but we can reduce the risk with the help of the compensatory controls. So while the cloud provides lots of business opportunities, also there are some concerns and some risks on the data privacy, data security, data residency, and all those aspects.